What's up, everybody? What's going on? Week 14 of the Max Brown Sunday Show. Sorry I missed you last week. Where was I last week? It was the Rams game. My wife had a little event for her nonprofit, but we're back in the saddle today for what has been the busiest Sunday of the year by far, and busiest Sunday coaching wise that I can remember in recent memory. I've got one, two, three, four, five head coaches, I guess six, including Kiff, which is the biggest one. And I got a full, what'll end up being 15-minute breakdown film wise why LSU wants Kiffin so bad. I feel like we get lost in that of like what makes Kiffin truly a great head coach. It's not just the aura and the social media presence. It is the football X's and O's as well, which that's why you guys are coming and watching the segments. But busy day. You got John Sumrall leaving Tulane, now at Florida. A little bit of a repeat of Billy Napier from my seat. Pete Golding, now the head man at Ole Miss. Kiffin at LSU. Alex Golish to Auburn. Ryan Silverfield to Arkansas. Jonathan Smith out at Michigan State, which the West Coaster in me finds really interesting, especially given that it's only year two. Gone are the days of you getting a full year three if you think that you don't have the pulse of your program. And then what's really interesting to me is where does this leave Penn State? Because everything I'm seeing online is Penn State staying optimistic, but those odds for who ends up being Penn State's head coach are all over the damn map. There's Lincoln Riley, there's Brian Dable, there is who was three? It was someone like Matt Campbell. So going back to the Matt Campbell that he's always in there every single time a head coach vacancy opens. But my takeaway there, I mean, Lincoln Riley, if that happens, that would be chaotic. Obviously, Lincoln Riley left Oklahoma, and that was chaotic. So it could happen. But in a very limited head coach talent pool, it feels like we're on a path towards a significant portion of the Penn State fan base ultimately they're not gonna like the hire that they ultimately get, given the fact that all the candidates are all over the place. Versus the hires we're seeing today, kind of fits into place. All of them kind of make sense. I think the two most surprising ones to me are obviously one, Pete Golden getting the full-time label from Ole Miss, which I'll get into, and then John Sumrall at Florida. Of all the SEC schools that named a head coach today, my sense is Florida is the most uneasy because it feels very rinse and repeat for what Billy Napier was just 4 years ago. Chat, how's it going? Cool Facts 123. Yo, what's going on? I think we're live on Twitter and TikTok as well. Holding it down on YouTube. Been an awesome year on YouTube. Appreciate all you guys hanging out. We've had 17,000 subscribers gained this year, most of which just in the past few months, most of which coming off the segments of this show. So appreciate you guys. And like I said, just to tease it real quick before I get into my thoughts, big picture on each head coaching hire, got a full Kiffin breakdown, X's and O's wise, of what I thought were his best play calls in the Egg Bowl, which if you're an LSU fan watching this, or if you're a Ole Miss fan wondering what you're going to miss next year, I got you covered. But yeah, quick thoughts about each hire. John Sumrall to Florida. That one is the most intriguing to me because one, Sumrall's name's been in the mix for all these SEC jobs since the day that they've come open. You knew he was going to get one of those jobs. My sense, though, is there is an uneasiness within the Florida fan base where it is very much, hey, this is rinse and repeat for what Billy Napier was 4 years ago. And there's been success throughout college football. Florida had it with Urban Meyer. Other schools have had it where you get a group of five coach and you put more resources behind him and he takes off. So just because it didn't work for Billy Napier doesn't mean it won't work for John Sumrall. But I do think Florida wanted a splashier hire. And that is one of my big takeaways from all these new SEC coaches is no out of the box hires. There's no John Gruden coming from left field. There's no poaching a sitting Power 4 noteworthy head coach outside of Ole Miss and LSU. But, that wasn't necessarily the case for Florida, Auburn, and Arkansas. There's no dusting off an older coach that's been there before and trying to have another go at it in a Jimbo Fisher or some guy like that. There's no, hey, NFL coordinator coming to the college ranks, younger guy taking a chance on, a guy like that. There's no sitting coordinator. The Pete Golden thing to me is its own situation, but very safe hires, or I guess from an athletic director standpoint, no one's really going to be like, oh man, that was a bad hire. You're not going to really lose the intro press conference with the hires that happened today. Kiffin's its own beast. But that is just noteworthy for me, where it's very, very kind of safe, right? You're not taking a huge swing. And I think Summerall falls into that, and it'll be interesting because different beast now, not only having to compete in the SEC, but recruit in the SEC. Now that you got all the powers, and Florida's right now sitting at what? On paper, the middle of the pack in terms of intrigue. Summerall is going to have to get his recruiting chops up, and I know they're hiring a GM as well, which I'll get into that in a Summerall breakdown that I'll put out later this week. Pete Golden at Ole Miss. Obviously, Kiffin going to LSU. I called an Ole Miss game last year and was impressed with Pete Golden. I will say, though, doesn't have the normal head coach aura, which I know is very much a buzzword. And like, Max, what does that mean? Kind of hard to define, but most people with a football sense know exactly what I'm talking about. That's not necessarily his DNA. From my experience, just the interviews I've watched of him, it's some of these guys you can tell, oh, it's only a matter of time before he's leading an SEC program. I don't necessarily know if you would say that about Pete Golding. That being said, super accomplished, was part of the Nick Saban tree. Kiffin plucked him and said, hey, come be my defensive coordinator at Ole Miss. And that defense has been great. My sense, though, is the reason you make Pete Golding the head coach right away, no questions asked, is because if you're Ole Miss and that AD, you might never have this chance again. And so this hire to me is as much about the next 4 weeks as it is about, the next season or two. It's like, hey, we have a golden opportunity that we've put so much investment in and so much work that we can't waste this opportunity. Even if it doesn't work out 2 years from now, we have to give ourselves every shot to win a national title in these 4 weeks. And Pete Golding is the best guy to do that. To say it a different way, or in the inverse, if you went out and got whoever was the next man up in terms of intriguing name, let's just say Golish didn't go with Auburn. If you went out and got Golish, then your program is literally going in 2 different directions while you're trying to chase a natty when your program's never even been close to chasing a natty before, at least in recent memory. So Golish might have been a good hire, but you're taking away from the here and now. So to me, my biggest takeaway is Golding was as much about the next 4 weeks, 5 weeks, hopefully 6 weeks for Ole Miss if they're going to win a national title, as it is about the 2026 season. You know what I'm saying? Golish for Auburn. This to me is the one of Arkansas, Florida, and Auburn. There's something about Golish that just fits. You're right. He's got that edge to him. I think what he did with USF was impressive. My sense is the Auburn program, to me, headspace wise, kind of matches where Golish is at. Here's what I mean. I think Florida walks away from this process deep down, a little pissed off they didn't get Lane Kiffin. Their ego's a little bit hurt that they got called out that, hey, it's very clear. It's LSU, Florida right now in terms of tiers, in terms of quality of jobs. That's how Lane Kiffin saw it. That reality is that's kind of how the media landscape saw it. Versus Auburn, they know where they're at. They know that, hey, they've chased a national title in recent memory, but they're not necessarily in the Alabama, LSU, Georgia conversation right now. And they're saying, all right, chip on the shoulder, let's go. Let's go get an up-and-coming head coach. Golish, he's got a chip on his shoulder. I'd imagine because there has been, and Florida might be this way, but I just get the sense that because Auburn's missed just Hugh Freeze swing and a miss. Your quarterback swing and a miss. I just get the sense that Auburn's like, enough is enough. Maybe it's because they've done this in my lifetime where they pop up for one great year and then they kind of go back down. My sense is that they're just going to go all in and go get one of these transfer portal quarterbacks and say, let's go do this thing. Like kind of following the blueprint of what Ole Miss did with Kiffin and Jackson Dart a little bit. But on paper, Golesh to me is my favorite of, again, Florida, Auburn, and Arkansas. With Silverfield, Ryan Silverfield, I don't know a lot about him. I haven't watched a lot of Memphis football. I've followed the Mike Norvell coaching tree of Ryan Silverfield, Dan Lanning, Kenny Dillingham. Obviously, Dillingham and Lanning, two of the top coaches in college football. Silverfield's kind of on, he's in that lane in terms of, that's why Arkansas hired him. Arkansas, from a program prestige, obviously behind all the schools that I just listed. Arkansas could be a tough job because they want to compete for titles every SEC title, like once a cycle, right? Once every 4 years kind of thing. Do they have the resources, the recruiting capability to compete at that level? I don't know. On one side, I think about what they did college basketball-wise with John Calipari, and they got the Tyson Foods money. What is it? Tyson Foods and Walmart money. They got the dough. They could come out of nowhere, but I don't know where they're at. And if they don't have the dough, I don't think they'll compete. The reason Kiffin was, or one of the big reasons Kiffin was successful at Ole Miss is, all right, Ole Miss doesn't have the program prestige of an Alabama or an LSU, but they're willing to spend right alongside them. Arkansas hasn't been there yet. Maybe they will be. That'll help Ryan Silverfield. On the flip side, if you're Ole Miss, the story that you're telling Pete Golden and your fan base is that it wasn't just all about Lane Kiffin. If we can keep investing so Golden can go in the portal and keep getting those guys, there's no reason on paper Ole Miss should take a step back. That being said, I think Kiffin is a great offensive brain, so replacing him and Charlie Weiss Jr. will be really tough for Pete Golden moving forward. But that's at least the story that I would tell myself if I was an Ole Miss fan. And then last, it got lost in the shuffle here, and I know I've been doing a decent amount of SEC videos, so not as many Big Ten videos, but I guess I've been doing UCLA, USC, Ohio State, Michigan. But Michigan State, Jonathan Smith out. My take with this, and I said this on air last night, I called the North Carolina State game last night, or excuse me, NC State. I got corrected by some Wolfpack fans on that one. But my biggest take with Jonathan Smith, nowadays in college football, or when I played 10 years ago, whether or not to retain your head coach was very black and white. It was very much, hey, did you win a certain amount of games? The record kind of spoke for itself. And if you were a team like USC and you weren't winning double-digit games, all right, you're getting fired. If you're a team like whoever and you're dropping below eligibility, all right, then you're going to get fired. Nowadays, your job as an AD is to truly understand, does your head coach have the pulse of that locker room? And is there outside of wins and losses, and is there a true pathway to a championship? What I mean by that is Virginia, look at what they did with Tony Elliott. Tony Elliott on paper was not winning games, but if you were around that program, there was a ton of belief from player, administration, fan base about the trajectory that Tony Elliott was on. Virginia infused a ton of money, brand new facility, and this is what's coming about, a potential ACC title for Virginia. For Michigan State, my sense is that they had the read where Jonathan Smith just didn't have the pulse of the locker room, pulse of the fan base, the recruiting runway, whatever it is, to truly get this thing back on track. So you cut bait, and then I believe it's reported that Pat Fitzgerald's getting in there. That's a good fit. I got a video coming out on that later this week. But my point there is, in today's era, it's less whether or not to retain a head coach, less about wins and losses and more about a subjective feel from the AD about whether or not that head coach has the pulse of everyone involved in the program. Because if you don't, well, then you're out. Versus 10 years ago, it was all about just wins and losses. And you kind of were on a specific time frame, and you weren't as quick to cut bait, so to speak, even because you were latched on to, oh, this is my hire and we got to give him a chance and all that. I think that narrative is or that mindset is stale, especially because so much money is getting invested in these players and boosters, and you're asking so much of your donor base. A lot of people hanging on YouTube. Appreciate you guys. I'll get into the Kiffin segment here next. Chat, how we living? YouTube name 179 says Arkansas is a good head coach away from being a respectable program. 1 second here. Yeah, the Arkansas thing. I mean, where my head goes there is if Arkansas gets back, they're stealing wins from somebody. Not everybody can keep winning 10 games. A lot of teams in the SEC winning 10 games. I feel like Fitzgerald Morale Rally says, I feel like Fitzgerald is probably the best hire for Michigan State they could have had. Think he has them getting 7-ish wins and competing with Michigan relatively soon. I'm just thinking about this as I'm reading your comment. The timing's interesting where you're not turning the page that quickly and the media knowing that quickly unless you're already talking with Pat Fitzgerald behind the scenes, which is kind of scummy, to be honest. But it's the reality of the world that we live in. Yeah, I don't know. I would not like that if I was Jonathan Smith. And other take I have with Jonathan Smith in the transfer portal era where there's so much player movement. And because there's so much player movement, it's hard to be a strictly development program. And it's hard to install pro-style offensive schemes. That's where Jonathan Smith made his money at Oregon State. Max, why is it hard to install pro-style schemes? Because you need offensive linemen to live and breathe that system for 2, 3, 4 years. You need running backs to grow in the system. And I guess Jonathan Smith had some young running backs, but still, the take on that is when he found Damian Martinez, when he found number 28, the guy before him. Anyways, they were young guys from the state of Texas. Well, they have one good year. Nowadays, those guys just get poached. At Oregon State, they could roll with them for 4 years. That scheme, that style, much harder to implement in the transfer portal era. All right, Lane Kiffin breakdown time. I watched the Egg Bowl film. Let's dive into it. 1 second here. Boom. Share my screen. Sorry, 1 sec. Got some footage here. Let's get it. See, nobody noticed Yale completing an insane 27-point second-half comeback in their first FCF playoff appearance. Nobody noticed Malachi Toney breaking the laws of physics against his Pittsburgh matchup. Nobody noticed Blake Horvath becoming the first Navy quarterback ever to pass and rush for 1,000 yards in the same season. We all missed it as a college football world because every single reporter, fan, Twitter feed, Instagram feed was locked in on Lane Kiffin and when and how and the whole deal of how he was going to announce that he was going to LSU. Or when was he going to accept the deal? Will he coach the playoff for Ole Miss? Those were the wrong questions. Why does LSU even want Kiffin anyways? Those are the ones that people aren't diving into enough. And those are the questions that I'm pumped to dive into right now because I actually think the film from this past weekend in the Egg Bowl will give us some answers, actionable answers for why LSU wants Lane Kiffin because it's not necessarily about the aura. In a big way, it's about the players that he has. Kewan Lacey was an absolute force in the Egg Bowl, 143 yards and 1 touchdown on 27 carries. What does that have to do with Kiff? Well, Lacey's performance is not, it's just the most recent example Lacey's performance is just the most recent example we can point to of Lane Kiffin's proficiency in acquiring talent in the portal. Kewan Lacey, one of the best running backs in the country, right here was his best run of the day in the Egg Bowl. He's going off tackle left. They're going to pull this guard around. He's blocking. And then Kewan Lacey takes it in the front side A-gap, and then basically with speed just beats all 3 defenders for Mississippi State to the sideline. Both these safeties are coming down. He beats them, and then this inside linebacker's beat on leverage. He's trying to chase, and Lacey's speed is just too much to handle. I'll show you the run here because this one's just fun to watch, and it was his best run of the day. But then I'll also get into Lane Kiffin's design capability as well. Lacey was the 13th ranked running back in the portal this past year. Most folks had him rated as a 3-star prospect. Fast forward to November, and he's a top 5 running back in the country by PFF's grading scale. Top 10 in yards and second in touchdowns. Right here, this shows some of the creativity that Kiff has utilizing Lacey. Whatever it takes to get the rock in his hands. He's going to motion his F jet sweep this way. He's got, first thing that jumps out, this looks like, 12 personnel with a tight end. Well, it's 2 tight ends here. It's 3 offensive linemen to the left. So right here, this guy who looks like a tight end, that's a tackle body. Use this formation multiple times. So if you're an LSU fan watching this film and you've watched my breakdowns before, you know I've called out LSU's run game for being incredibly vanilla. Ole Miss's, it might look like that when you're sitting on your couch. Ole Miss's run game, very complex in terms of the little wrinkles that they can install. They're going to toss the jet or fly the jet sweep motion here. Tight ends are going to block down, and then they're easily going to get the edge off the right-hand side. And the way they get the edge off the right-hand side is because of this jet sweep motion, all 3 of these linebackers start flowing to the defense's left, offense's right. And then this linebacker is put in a really tough spot where he's tracking this motion too. But again, he's getting going to his left, which because of the offensive lineman playing tight end here and the flow of the defense, Lacey is able to easily get the edge to the left. When you're sitting on your couch, this looks like just an ease or like a simple wildcat run. Oh, by the way, I forgot about that. Another creative wrinkle, wildcat, the direct snap. He's able to easily get the edge. Little thing that the offense does, really tough for the defense to guard. Last point on Lacey here. Again, same formation that I'm talking about. 3 offensive linemen to the left-hand side of the center. This guy right here, tackle body. Reason that's important is when he blocks down and you have push from the tight end as a tackle, the actual left tackle, left guard, you're able to get tons of push on Mississippi State. This tight end tackle guy again, he's able to combo block to this linebacker. You got the tight end who's in the backfield here. He's lead blocking down the A gap. Another lead blocker in the backfield. And it's an easy push for about 8 following, getting his carry, following the tight end. Little things are just getting that Kiff does that you don't even necessarily notice. Big difference in terms of getting push and getting the first down right there. Talent acquisition, especially in the transfer portal where resources need to be spent wisely, is a huge part of a head coach's job in 2025. And not too many head coaches are better at it than Lane Kiffin. Here's another example. Trinidad Chambliss, not just the running back he got in the portal, but the quarterback he got as well. He was not a no-brainer pickup for Lane Kiffin. I can't find a report of any other SEC school calling him. Not even just recruiting him, just calling him. Only 2 quarterbacks have gone from Division II to finding success as an FBS starter in the transfer portal era. Austin Reed and now Trinidad Chambliss. He threw for 359 yards and 4 touchdowns. Thing that about Trinidad Chambliss, he's always throwing and he's getting the ball out of his hands quickly. Right here, it's not only Trinidad Chambliss getting the ball out of his hands quickly, but another, to me, rock on time. What is a very, very simple execution offensively that for defender to manage. A lot to defend. Here's what I mean. The route concept from the bunch on the top of the screen, you got this point man who little spray release hitch. Then you got a switch release by the other 2 receivers. Outside guy breaking inside into a corner. Inside guy breaking outside straight into the flat. Little flood concept. The thing that I want you to notice, though, is the center for Ole Miss, he's blocking a quarterback draw. So he's going to pass pro, give an opportunity for Chambliss to get this ball, and what he does, hit this hitch route towards the outside. But if that's not open or the linebackers vacate, Trinidad Chambliss can run the draw behind not only the center, who's right here, but also Kewan Lacey, who's lead blocking. I'll clear it here, and then you can see it. But imagine you're this Sam linebacker who's just, man, I'm trying to play college football. Good luck defending this against Lane Kiffin's offense, where you have to manage not only the switch release by the receivers, not only the bunch concept, not only two different routes, a vertical route and a hitch coming at you, but oh, by the way, if I extend out outside the box too much, well, then I got Trinidad's legs that might become a factor in the draw game, in the quarterback run game. Again, very simple read for Trinidad Chambliss. If backers are out, let's run the draw. If they hang in, let's hit the hitch route quickly. But defensively, lot to process. Ball out quick, tight window, beats him with the throw. That's one of the best skill sets about Chambliss. He's always throwing on time. We talked about, and you guys, those of you guys that have been watching my breakdowns, Trinidad, his game against Oklahoma was teaching tape. That was big time in terms of, getting the ball out quickly. It's not only the design by Kiffin, but putting backers in tough places there. From there, one sec. Cool. But yeah, with Trinidad Chambliss, it's an example of Lane finding talent where other people just aren't looking. It's a testament to him embracing the new times. It's an example of Lane's ability to adjust to his offense and to his quarterback on the fly, even when his starter goes down with an injury 2 weeks into the year. But it is also an example of Lane getting lucky. And I don't think we can not acknowledge that. And I think that is a factor, not the biggest factor, but it's a factor for why Lane left for LSU. Because I think Lane, when he lays his head on the pillow at night, he's aware that he has hit on a lot of transfer portal talent. He hit in a huge way with Jackson Dart. He hit in a huge way with that Harris, the receiver last year. He hit in a huge way with Kewan Lacey, a huge way with Trinidad Chambliss. There's a lot of other programs, a lot of big-time programs who have not hit with the portal. And it was only a matter of time before Kiffin swings and misses with one of these transfer portal guys, totally changes the complexion of his team, and then therefore he's not maybe getting a top 3 job in college football at LSU. That's a factor that I don't think we can't dismiss. What LSU fans can count on with absolute certainty with Kiff coming to Baton Rouge is that Lane's bringing his offense with him. Tempo, motions, unbalanced formations, RPOs. It's not that Lane's doing stuff that other people aren't. It's just that Lane does stuff just better, the same stuff better than anyone else. And when you watch a Lane Kiffin offense, and if this is all you take away as an LSU fan or a college football fan watching this breakdown, 2 things jump out to me about a Lane Kiffin offense in 2025. Wouldn't have said this a decade ago, but it's the trust that he has and the confidence that his players play with fade routes specifically. There's 6 in this Egg Bowl matchup that they are constantly putting pressure on the defense with go balls. And then the second one is spacing. No coordinator in college football does a better job than Lane Kiffin at utilizing all 53 1/3 yards on the field to truly make the defense defend every blade of grass. The point on the fade balls, I mentioned Kewan Lacey. Well, when he's running the rock and he's in the backfield and these safeties out here have to manage him in the run game, well, then that gives you one-on-one matchups on the outside to run fade balls. And here, they're going to fake an action of running towards the left-hand side in this alleyway. And it makes both these safeties have to respect this run. No safety over the top. This was in third quarter, fourth quarter? You get a one-on-one opportunity on the top side of the field. And it just feels like when you watch an Ole Miss offense, these throws that are low completion throws for every other program in the country seem to be not low percentage completions or catches for Ole Miss. The next time I talk with Kiffin or Charlie Weiss Jr., I'm going to ask them about what are they doing in practice to create so much trust and confidence with fade balls, because it happened there for a home run touchdown catch, happened again here on one-on-one, top of the screen. Just good luck to that poor corner. All the middle high free safety, single high free safety with another safety defending against the run. Just one-on-one matchup on the outside. If you're Mississippi State, you're basically like, we got to take our chances. We got to take our chances on the outside. That's just a dime. It's a great adjustment by the receiver. This is the best catch of them all. That's 2. Here's 3. Touchdown to the back corner. Excellent job getting your foot down. Excellent throw by Trinidad Chambliss. Trust in his guy. Like, this is exceptional. And to my earlier point, if you're Lane Kiffin, you're saying that and being like, man, can I really trust at Ole Miss that we're going to get that level of quarterback play, that level of receiver play every single year? He's had a good run of 3 in a row. But that's a tough throw and catch. That's just great players making plays. And then the last one down here, that's 3. I'm only showing you 4 just so this breakdown isn't an hour long. I could have shown you 2 more. I had to cut. But you got a one-on-one matchup, bottom of the field. Again, you know the story. Safety allocating towards the box, not getting over the top. Chambliss hitting his dude. So much trust, so much confidence. They make this look so easy. Deep ball down the field. All right, you get the point. Fade balls, back shoulder over the top. Every single game you watch an Ole Miss team, they did it versus Georgia. That jumped out to me. Did it versus Oklahoma at times. Trust with the fade balls. And then the spacing. Max, what do you mean by spacing? Every single coach says spacing. What does that mean? I got 2 examples for you right here. Again, these are all clips from the Egg Bowl. I asked Lane Kiffin about this when I called their game last year. And I said, because Kiffin did not do this formation and these motions when I played for him at USC in 2013. And he should have, and he knows it. That's why he adjusted now. You give this scheme to Marquise Lee in space, good luck to any defense. This scheme with Robert Woods in space, good luck. But what is it? It's a motion. This receiver on the outside, he's motioning. He's motioning all the way to the outside, and he's literally standing on the sideline. Like that little hash mark on the sideline, he's going to run a 5-yard hitch. Most teams do not have this in their playbook. Most teams do not run hitches like this because you're so tight towards the sideline. They just you limit the kind of route tree that you can run. You literally can't run an out-breaking route. Kiffin says, hey, and this is, I didn't complete my thought. When I asked him about this, he said, hey, when he worked with Kendall Briles at FAU, that's what Art Briles and Baylor brought to college football and the game of football with RG3 in like the early 2010s. Kiffin stole that, implemented that into his tempo, some RPO offense. But my point is look at how far and unique this spacing is. This is early on in the game. You get yourself an easy completion. It's not groundbreaking, but it's a 5-yard completion. Look at it. He's literally standing on the sideline. That puts so much pressure on the defense because you can't really run cloud coverage to that side. Little 5-yard completion. Little thing, but my point is, and he does it in every single game, that's just a unique element of what LSU is going to have in their offense. And then another unique element here, again, you guys know the deal. I love the sign of a great play caller is when they call things that are super simple for your quarterback and offense to read, but very difficult for the defense to manage. Right here, trips to the left. They're going to jet sweep this guy into the flat. And then he's blocking as if it's a screen route. And then it's a 3-vert vertical concept, breaking towards the middle. And then a curl on the outside. I may have motioned the wrong guy. I think it might be it's the other way around. Sorry, it's this guy in motion, and then this guy's in the vertical. Either way, you guys get the point. But the reason I love this is you basically get a full vertical concept, but then the guy in motion, as we'll see, just a super easy check down. Yeah, it was the other guy that I motioned. Right now, you faking the screen. That's one wrinkle for the defense to defend, the bubble screen on the outside. Then you got 3 verts. But then the whole time, Trinidad knows he's got an easy check down to the flat. If the defense gets so soft because they're so scared of getting beat deep, because we talked about it, Ole Miss is phenomenal at go balls and executing those. Trinidad in the back of his mind always knows he's got this safety valve. Little dump off to the right. That's what he does. And this goes for, a clean little 8 yards there. That's what you're getting with Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss as a play caller. And at the end of the day, there's thousands of reasons to hire a head coach. But I thought it might be helpful to bring these two back into focus. Lane Kiffin and his staff are some of the best aggregators of talent in the sport. And 2, Lane Kiffin and his staff are some of the best offensive minds in the sport. Those are two facts. And that's why we've ignored so much around the college football world this past week, given Lane Kiffin's announcement. That's why Marty Smith had to sleep in a cot in Ole Miss's facility last night. And that's why this decision matters, not only for LSU, but the entire college football world. Chat is active. Chat is active. Big Dog 23. Hooch is crazy. Insane sports takes. There's a whole debate going on in the chat. It's going to be hard for me to track in real time. What other questions we got? I got about 10 more minutes. Then I got to work on an Alex Golish breakdown. It's coming. I watched every single interception and fumble from Golish's squad this year, trying to get a read on what Florida's getting defensively. Hooch is crazy says USC isn't the job it was 20 years ago because being in the Big Ten is such a nerf to that program. Imagine having to go cross country for conference games. Literally the worst part of the league expansion is the death of the Pac-12. My bad, Max. You don't got to apologize. Look at the helmet over my left shoulder. Not only that one. Not only the Pitt one. We got a Pac-12 helmet. Can't even reach right there. I miss the Pac-12 all the time, man. Yeah, my take on this subject is, and I used to kind of hedge my bets on this. Now, 2 years into it, I'm not. It is really difficult to build culture at USC, period. USC has the luxury of a lot of great things. Tradition, recruiting location, great place to go to school, resources, investment, historic stadium, awards, Heisman trophies, the whole deal. And one factor that does not work to USC's advantage is the ability to build culture, because it is in Los Angeles, California, where you have so many distractions. And I visit 15 to 20 college campuses every single year when I'm calling games. USC is the most unique campus of any of them, period, because it's not insulated. All these other campuses, you go to Clemson, you go to Virginia, you go to NC State, you go to North Carolina in Chapel Hill. Shoot, even Washington in Seattle, still somewhat insulated, even though it's in a bigger city. You go to Stanford and Palo Alto. It's difficult to build culture, especially in the transfer portal era, where you get so many new faces and you selling them on the upside and how great, this big city living is, and you put them in a fancy high-rise apartment. But then the second they get off the facility, you have no idea what all those guys are doing, because they're all doing something different. Versus when you're in, Raleigh, North Carolina is a relatively big city, but you go to NC State. I was there last night. It's all about NC State and a football player, and you're staying on campus, and that's where you're at. LA is a different beast. It's the biggest challenge for any head coach that Pete Carroll was able to manage it before everyone had cell phones in their pocket and social media. And it was a different generation of player that was built more on grit and respecting authority. And now it's a generation where it's about they're inherently about the flash and the notoriety and the publicity and the marketing and all that. And it's a generation that is all about player empowerment, and it's more about partnership with coaches rather than an authority of coach. It's a different dynamic, and it's the hardest thing to juggle, in my opinion, as a USC head coach. Pete Carroll was just that guy when it comes to culture. He was. Don't get me wrong. He was. Fun story. When I came to LA for the very first time, my brother lived here, and I was doing like an unofficial visit at USC. They didn't even plan this. I ran into Pete Carroll at El Tarasco, the burrito spot in Manhattan Beach. And it was like literally like out of a movie of like you'd happen to run into Pete Carroll. He wasn't even the head coach of USC, but I was like down there for the weekend and, added to the aura of what that weekend was. UPA sometimes I wonder your guys' names if I'm about to slip up and say something I shouldn't say with your guys' usernames. Anyways, 4113 username says suspending Lemon and Lane for the first quarter seemed pretty cultured, disciplined, playing time, ultimate lever for players. True. Do we know what happened there? I saw the press conference. I saw the tweet. What happened there? Like, what do they do? What are the message boards saying? For those that don't know, USC, their two best receivers suspended for the first quarter yesterday. What else we got? I started this live. For those of you guys coming in late, I gave you my 2 cents on each of the coaching hires. This week, I'm going to be cranking out content on all of them. But tomorrow, for those of you guys that missed the Kivin segment, I'll clip that out, and I got a John Sumrall segment coming out as well. Don't know, evidently late to meeting. Yeah, it's funny. I'm sure you've watched the same press conferences I have. Lincoln, over the years, Lincoln doesn't outright say it, but he's mentioned a couple times of like, oh, Mekhi Lemon's like matured or like grown up or, like really matured during his time. That's coach speak to used to not be locked in. Now he's getting more locked in. You know what I'm saying? What I was bringing up was how Kentucky kind of fumbled hiring Sumrall. Yeah, because Stoops situation. I haven't been tracking the Kentucky news all that much. Here's what I'll say about that, though. If you're Kentucky, you don't want to be the 6th SEC coach or SEC program to be in the market this year, especially in a market that doesn't have that premier guy or like a super deep coaching pool, at least on paper. That's, to me, where Florida State's at. To me, Florida State's making a 5-10-year decision rather than a 1 to 3 year decision. You know what I'm saying? Florida State could have hopped in the coaching market, but then they're what, the 4th best job next year if it happens. They're like top 2 job most likely. And yes, it sucks in the short term if you're Florida State. It might suck in the short term if you're Kentucky. But long term, do you really want to be in this coaching pool? And that's to my point earlier. We're like Penn State. Dude, Penn State, I think all their supporters and everyone around the program's keeping a smile. And they're saying, we're Penn State. We're right there with LSU in terms of program prestige and, the quality of the job. Dude, that candidate pool is all over the map. And the reason it's all over the map is because there's not a clear-cut hire for that program. And when there's not a clear-cut hire, inevitably, whoever you take is not going to have the total approval of the fan base. You know what I'm saying? And that relates to Kentucky, where you don't want to compete in this cycle, I don't think. It's the same for USC. Next year, I think it's going to be a blessing in disguise for USC. Next year is going to be very black and white. Riley makes the playoff. All right, you're taking the next step. He retains his job. He doesn't make the playoff. I think they probably move on from Lincoln Riley. There's not the gray area like some of these other programs have. 9 wins, that was a win. We were chatting on this live before of back in July and August, and I had USC at 8 wins. 9 wins. Once the emotion of the frustration of losing to Oregon and losing to Illinois, losing to Notre Dame wears off, this was a step in the right direction for USC. It was. 9-3. Next year will be the make or break year. And I'm getting ready to make a short form video on this. No one's talking about this. Jaden Maiava is one of the best quarterbacks in college football. And in a weird quarterback draft class, it would not surprise me if his draft grade comes back as a 1st or 2nd round quarterback. That would not be the craziest thing. Would not be the craziest thing at all. And so Lincoln, one of the big things for USC is making sure Maiava comes back. This is a weird draft class. I'm not like Fernando Mendoza in the grand scheme of number 1 quarterbacks in the draft class. I'm not there yet. Is he a great player? Sure. But Ty Simpson, little undersized, phenomenal anticipatory throw, hasn't played that much football. Garrett Nussmeier, banged up, hurt. Those of you guys that have followed my content, I love Garrett Nussmeier, but where's his mentals at after a tough year? All right. Lenora Sellers, he's probably coming back. Does he hop in the portal? That'll be interesting. Who else is out there? Cade Klubnik, he's not going to be a top. He might get drafted, but he's not going to be a top few round pick. Where does Maya Ava go? Or what does he do? I think he'll come back, but that to me is not a given. Penn State hasn't hired anyone yet. When do we think Penn State's going to hire someone? I'll give you guys an over-under. Over-under. Do we think Penn State hires someone? It's the 30th right now. Dude, signing day is like next week. It's got to be this week. I'll go by Wednesday. Wednesday the 3rd. End of day Wednesday. Over-under. Think Penn State hires someone in the next 72 hours? If they don't, what are they waiting on? An NFL guy to finish his season? Poaching someone in the playoff? Yeah, this next month is so critical, and you guys are like this. And we got a few dozen. Yeah, we got a good crowd today. Before my Thanksgiving feast, I chatted with Bill Belichick this week because I called the NC State North Carolina game. On that note, I'm calling 3 bowl games this year. They haven't been announced yet, so I'm sorry I can't tell you guys. But when you're sitting on your couch, hopefully you have some time off work watching the random games. I'll be on 3 calls this month or in December, so keep a lookout. But I was chatting with Bill Belichick, and I was like, Coach, how are you going to manage the next 2 weeks, the chaos of the next 2 weeks with gearing up to finish out high school, the early signing day this week, but then also the portal movement for all these teams. And he downplayed it. Classic Bill was like, I don't think it's chaotic at all. In my mind, I'm like, I respect it, Coach. You got to act like you got everything under control. But these next 4 weeks, the next month is more important for every program across the country than the following 7 months after it. I don't think that's an exaggeration. What you do in these next 4 to 5 weeks from a roster building standpoint set up your entire 2026 season. The one-on-one meetings you have with guys on your team that you want to retain, are you successful at doing so? The evaluation and the quick decisions that you have to make in the portal of whether or not you want a guy and investing money behind that guy, who you're bringing on visits, how that plays out with your high school class. Can you get guys that are playing right now on teams competing for a championship? If they hop in the portal, can you get them in your system before, semester schools start? These next 5 weeks are critical. AJ 1218, good to see you again. Thanks for hanging out, AJ. Love that take. I made that video. He's saying Josh Heupel might leave Tennessee, and it would be funny if he does. I made the same take about 4 weeks ago, and I said, there's more jobs than there are candidates. That's just simple market dynamics. When that happens, a candidate's going to come from nowhere that we're not thinking about. That's just simple market dynamics. And at the time, we were talking about Kiffin at Ole Miss, Drinkwitz at Missouri, and I'm missing someone. Oh, Clark Lee at Vanderbilt. And I was like, if we're talking about those 3 guys, where's Josh Heupel in that equation? I know Tennessee's super prestigious program. I get that. But there are levels to this thing. And Tennessee is not in the same level right now as Penn State. I don't think they are. And so with that, as we're seeing with Lane Kiffin, there's levels to this thing. Ole Miss, he bumps up to LSU. He's at Tennessee. Again, I know Tennessee's a great program. Penn State comes with a bad check. Josh Heupel is one of those names that you got to be, at least be like thinking about. It would be crazy. I would not bet on it, but it could happen. All right, this is my last thing, then I'll log off. I can't pronounce your username. You guys in the usernames, man. Ends in 1757. Says Kiffin is the most unloyal head coach ever. All right. Kiffin was in a lose-lose situation. Like, what was he supposed to do? Because if he would have let the AD and Ole Miss know that he was on his way out 4 days ago, 5 days ago, 7 days ago, 3 days ago, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, people would have been reaming him a new one regardless. I'll keep it more focused. If he would have let Ole Miss know before the Egg Bowl that he was leaving for LSU, they wouldn't have let him coach the Egg Bowl. People would have been criticizing him already that he's leaving his team and quitting on his team. If they would have lost that game, it would have been all Kiffin's fault. He stayed with the team. I genuinely believe that it wasn't a clear-cut decision for him. He's middle of game prep. He's middle of literally trying to make a conference title national championship run. I don't blame him for waiting after the game. And then after the game, he literally finishes up at Saturday night. We're all like, it's totally reasonable for him to go home and celebrate the best regular season in Ole Miss history. And then literally the next day, not only does he have to game plan for Georgia if they have to actually play them, but then he's got to think about a future that's going to dictate, or a decision that's going to dictate his legacy for the rest of his life. Pretty reasonable that might take a day. And then, it stretches into the next morning. That isn't about Lane Kiffin and making it all about himself, in my opinion. And you might hear that and say, I'm just defending my old head coach. I didn't really have that close of a relationship with Kiff, so it's like that's not really a thing. But my point is, at that point, if he's trying to negotiate or leverage to keep coaching the team that he wants to coach to a national title, it would make sense that those negotiations drag out into the next day. We're talking about like a 54-hour window. Anyone that's been a part of any negotiation ever in the business world would dream to have a negotiation end in a 54-hour window. Usually it takes 54 days to get a negotiation done. I get that Ole Miss fans are frustrated. I get that they're lining up the tarmac and booing him and the whole deal. That he made his bed. But to have non-Ole Miss fans say that he's like he lied and he hasn't changed and all that, that to me is a step too far. I think you can have both. I think there can be two truths here. Oxford taught him a new side of himself, and he settled into who he was, and he's a better man for it. That's truthful. It's also true that this was an extremely difficult decision, that genuinely being a head coach these past 4 months, that he needed that extra time to figure out that decision. I think that can be true. And then how do you want him to do it? How do you want him to announce it? He was in a lose-lose situation regardless. And at the end of the day, he made a decision that I think most coaches would have made. It's understandable that people are getting on him because of his history and because of the Tennessee stuff and because of just all the Kiffin, shenanigans, so to speak. But to me, it's ultimately, when you literally just look at what's happened over the past few weeks, I think most head coaches would have handled it in a very similar way. All right. It's a good way to end it. Almost 5:30. 5:30 West Coast time. Anyways, good stuff. That Kiffin breakdown was awesome. The numbers were great in terms of you guys hanging out. I appreciate that. I'm going to keep on planning to do these lives. I'm going to pull up my calendar real quick. The Sunday show, I'll do one next week, and then I will be, I'll do one the next 2 weeks. We'll make it happen, and then that'll probably be my last one for the year, and then we'll talk off-season stuff. I'll probably start diving more into some NFL breakdowns, which will be fun for the NFL playoffs, just because obviously we're going to lose some college football games. I'll do full college football playoff previews and the whole deal. If you're only seeing this live for the first time, I do game previews, not just like another talking head saying the same talking points, but backing them up with film. Check those out. We'll do those for all the CFP games. And what was I just going to say? Oh, we're going to, in the offseason, going to get back to more of the YouTube essay videos, which a lot of my videos during the season were breakdown stuff. Those of you guys that were hanging out in the spring and the summer, know some of the more like essay style videos, which check out YouTube if you're like, Max, what you're talking about. But they're over there and there's some good stuff. But it's been a fun season. I don't have to travel next week, which I'm super excited about. But I will a few weeks after. 3 bowl games. Keep a lookout on all my socials. I'll be posting where I'm heading. And this was a fun one. Thanks for hanging, guys.